I found out I was just my wife's financial backup from my daughter's diary. It was meant to be private. But once I read how they laughed about using me, I made sure they'd never depend on me again. They never expected how everything played out. I will tell you. First, let me quickly thank you for your continuous support. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. It will be great if you can leave a comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today's special shout out goes to Jason Lupo from Paris. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's go deeper into the story. I used to think being reliable was my best quality. I wasn't flashy. I didn't bring home spontaneous gifts or write love notes tucked in drawers. But the mortgage was always paid on time. The oil got changed before the engine light came on. Emily's braces, Carla's Pilates classes, the home Wi-Fi that ran like a heartbeat through the house. I made all that happen. Quietly. Consistently. I thought that meant something. I'm Paul. I'm 48. An accountant by trade, a husband by effort, and a father by absolute devotion. That was my trifecta. I came from a family where reliability was currency, and I carried that legacy like a badge. Carla used to joke that I was born with a calculator in my hand, and maybe she wasn't wrong. I liked order. I liked systems. And I loved my family in the way I knew how, through provision. Carla and I met in our late 20s. She was electric then, sharp-tongued, beautiful, a little reckless with money, but mesmerizing in a room. I was drawn to her the way a moth doesn't question the flame. When she said she was tired of dating musicians and bartenders, I was proud to be the opposite. I offered stability, a plan, a future. At least, I thought that's what she wanted. We had Emily 2 years into our marriage. I remember holding her in the hospital, terrified by how small she was, how perfect. From that moment on, every decision I made had her in mind. I took the promotion that came with longer hours. I started tracking our expenses on spreadsheets so we could afford family vacations and college savings. I bought life insurance. Carla teased me about that too, called it romance, Paul style. I thought it was love. I still do. Things changed gradually, the way houses settle into the ground over time. Carla grew quieter with me, louder with her friends. Emily became a teenager with earbuds and eye rolls. I told myself it was normal. I wasn't looking for applause. I just wanted a peaceful home. And if that meant being the background guy, the one who made things work, I was okay with that. Then, last October, Emily went on a school trip to Washington, D.C. 3 nights. I remember because I was the one who packed her bag. Carla had a book club and said she was burnt out from planning everything. I added snacks, labeled her meds, tucked in a $20 bill just in case. I vacuumed her room that Saturday while she was gone, not for any reason other than habit. That's when I found the diary. Pink hardcover, frayed ribbons sticking out the side. It was tucked under her mattress like something half forgotten. I hesitated. I swear I did. It felt wrong to touch it. She was 16, not 6. But something gnawed at me. It wasn't suspicion, exactly. It was that quiet ache you get when you feel 1,000 miles away from someone you love. I told myself I'd read a line. Just a line. Just to check in. What I read froze me where I stood. He's so clueless. Mom says he was never her first choice, just the backup. The guy you settle for when real life doesn't work out. She said it laughing. I think it's kinda true though. I mean, he's nice. But we don't love him or anything. We just need him. For now. I stared at the page, the words sinking like stones. The room buzzed with silence. My daughter's handwriting, loopy, careless, suddenly felt like a knife. Carla's voice echoed in those lines, unmistakable in tone. It wasn't just a teenager being cruel. It was truth, echoed secondhand. I sat down on her bed, the vacuum still humming in the hallway behind me. Everything I had built, everything I believed I was to them, cracked in that moment. I had been dependable. I had been generous. I had been available. But I had never been chosen. And the worst part? They knew. They laughed. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay in bed next to Carla, her back turned toward me like always, her breathing even and soft. It used to comfort me, that rhythm. But now, every exhale sounded like a secret I wasn't meant to know. I stared at the ceiling, tracing invisible cracks that weren't there, wondering how long this had been going on. Wondering what other truths had been dressed up as jokes behind my back. I tried to convince myself it was a misunderstanding. A dumb teenage entry, dramatized like everything else Emily said these days. But those words, just the backup, they weren't random. They were too specific, too casual in their cruelty. And the fact that Carla had said it to her sister, laughing, as if my devotion was something amusing, that crushed me in a way I didn't know was possible. I wanted to confront her right then and there. Wake her up, throw the diary on the bed and demand an explanation. But instead, I just lay there, paralyzed. Because what do you even say when you find out you were plan B in your own marriage? The next morning, I went through the motions like I always did. Made coffee, left a cup for Carla, checked my email before heading to the office. Carla breezed in while I was buttering toast, hair damp from her shower, robe tied loose at the waist. "You're up early," she said, grabbing her cup without looking at me. "I always am," I replied. She didn't notice my tone. Or maybe she did and chose not to ask. That was her way. Selective attention dressed up as detachment. That whole day at work, I kept replaying the words from Emily's diary. The phrasing, the indifference, the implications. We don't love him or anything. We just need him. That need sliced deeper than don't love. It implied usefulness, not affection. Function, not feeling. I wasn't a father or husband. I was a walking ATM with a steady job and decent credit. It made me sick. I started seeing everything differently after that. Carla's compliments, when they came, sounded scripted. Emily's hugs felt dutiful, not genuine. The way Carla let bills pile up on the kitchen counter, knowing I'd handle them. How Emily always assumed I'd fill up her gas tank before she even asked. They weren't grateful. They were entitled. And the worst part? I had trained them to be that way. That weekend, I went back to Emily's room when she was out with friends. I didn't read more, couldn't. But I did notice something else. On her corkboard was a collage of photos. Her and her friends. Her and Carla. A few with her aunt. Not one with me. I stood there for a long time, longer than I should have, staring at that board. I kept asking myself, have I really been invisible this whole time? Or have they just gotten good at pretending I matter? That night, over dinner, Carla was chatting about some neighbor's drama, who was cheating on who just got laid off. Emily was texting under the table, half listening. I was quiet. "You okay?" Carla asked between bites of grilled chicken. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." "Well, try not to bring it home, okay?" she said. "It's not our fault work's draining." That was when it really hit me. I could fall apart right in front of them, and they wouldn't even notice unless it interrupted their routine. My fatigue was an inconvenience, not a concern. After dinner, I sat on the porch with a beer and 1,000 thoughts. I wasn't angry yet. I was something worse. I was disillusioned. My life, it turned out, wasn't a shared effort. It was a contract they never signed, but always expected me to honor. That night, I opened a new spreadsheet. But this time, it wasn't for budgeting. It was a list of accounts Carla had access to, of bills I paid on her behalf, of small, automatic sacrifices I made every week that they never saw. I stared at that list for an hour. And then I started making phone calls. Not to confront, to prepare. Because when someone shows you they only value you for what you provide, the only sane response is to stop providing. Once I started seeing clearly, I couldn't unsee it. Carla's voice became sharper to my ears, her requests more loaded. Every casual, "Can you transfer a little extra this month?" Or, "Emily needs new shoes, just grab them on your lunch break," felt like a cold transaction now. I'd spent nearly 2 decades running this house like a well-oiled machine, but it was only now that I realized I was the only one who knew how the gears turned. Everyone else just expected the lights to stay on. So I started turning the dimmer switch. First, I stopped putting money into Carla's personal household fund. It was an account I'd set up 5 years ago, after she said she wanted more control over daily expenses. I deposited $1,000 into it at the start of each month. Quiet, reliable, unspoken. I watched her log into the banking app 2 days after the first. Her brow furrowed, but she didn't say anything at first. That was Carla passive until the inconvenience became undeniable. Then I stopped buying groceries on the way home. That was another routine I'd trained myself into. check the fridge, make a quick stop at the market, restock without fanfare. Instead, I drove past the grocery store. I ate dinner at a diner down the road. Alone. I brought leftovers to work the next day. No fanfare, no complaints. Carla noticed within a week. "Why didn't you pick up milk yesterday?" she asked one morning, tapping the empty carton like it had personally offended her. "I thought you were handling it now," I said calmly, sipping my coffee. She gave me a long look. "Since when?" "Since always. I've just stopped pretending it's only my job." She didn't respond, just blinked and turned back to her phone. Emily was more oblivious. Teenagers are skilled at that. She kept asking for gas money, for new sneakers, for Venmo transfers for field trips. I gave her less each time. When she asked about it, I just said, "You might want to talk to your mom." I could see the cracks forming, the tension in Carla's shoulders, the way Emily slammed her bedroom door a little harder than usual. But I wasn't being cruel. I was being clear. I was done being the scaffolding they climbed without acknowledgement. In the quiet of those evenings alone, I started looking up rental listings. I ran numbers. I talked to a lawyer, just exploratory, I told myself. Nothing official. But in my gut, I already knew the direction I was heading. I was preparing for life without them, and it terrified me. Not because I couldn't handle it, but because I wasn't sure who I was outside of this role I'd poured myself into for so long. I thought about the version of myself that existed before I met Carla. A little dull, maybe. A little rigid. But hopeful. Open. Capable of believing in partnership. That man had been buried under years of unreciprocated effort, but I could still feel him there, like an echo. Carla finally confronted me a few days later. It was a Tuesday. We were in the kitchen. Emily was out, thank God. "You've been weird lately," she said, arms crossed, leaning against the counter. "Weird how?" "Distant. Cold. You're not doing the things you usually do." "I'm not your backup plan anymore," I said, quietly. She blinked. "What?" I looked at her then. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I saw her not as my wife, but as a person who had made a choice to use me. And I couldn't unknow that. "I read Emily's diary," I said. "The part about what you told your sister. About how I was never the first choice. Just useful." Her face flushed instantly, guilt, anger, something tangled and ugly. "That wasn't meant for you," she said, her voice sharp with embarrassment more than remorse. "It was a joke, taken out of context." I nodded. That's what people always say when they get caught saying something cruel. Jesus, Paul, are you seriously going to tear our family apart over something overheard in a kid's diary? "No," I said. "You already did that. I'm just done pretending it didn't happen." She didn't respond, just stood there, stunned. And I walked past her, slow and certain, upstairs to pack an overnight bag. It wasn't everything, just enough. Enough to show I was serious. Enough to finally choose myself. It didn't take long for the silence to crack wide open. After I packed my overnight bag and left the house that night, I checked into a modest extended stay hotel on the edge of town. It was nothing fancy, two-burner stove, scratchy sheets, a view of the parking lot, but it was mine. Quiet, clean, uncomplicated. I sat on the edge of the bed with my shoes still on, staring at my own hands like they belonged to someone else. I couldn't shake the question buzzing in my head. Why didn't I leave sooner? The next morning, I didn't text Carla. I didn't tell her where I was. I just went to work like it was any other day. If she wanted to reach me, she could. My number hadn't changed. She called around lunchtime. I let it ring. Twice. Then, on the third try, I answered. "Where are you?" she asked. No hello, no pause. Just accusation, raw and biting. "I'm safe," I said. "That's all you need to know right now." "You're acting like a damn martyr," she hissed. Over a teenage diary and a misunderstood joke? I felt my jaw tighten. It wasn't just the diary, Carla. It's been years. Years of being invisible unless you needed something. I was willing to carry the weight for this family, but not as a joke. Not as a backup. And certainly not for people who don't even pretend to respect me anymore. "You're blowing everything up because you're hurt," she snapped. "You're being dramatic. And you're still avoiding responsibility," I said, more calmly than I felt. "So maybe we both need space." She hung up. That weekend, Emily showed up at the hotel. I don't know how she found me. Probably tracked my location through an app we'd forgotten to uninstall. She stood in the hallway with her hoodie pulled up, looking small and furious at once. "You really left?" she said. "Over my diary?" "It wasn't just that," I said. "But yes, that was the final straw." Her mouth tightened. "I didn't mean for you to read it. But you wrote it. And it was honest." She crossed her arms. "So what? Everyone says stuff they don't mean sometimes. You said you didn't love me. That I was just useful. Is that what you don't mean? Or is that what you really think?" She looked away, blinking fast. "I was just writing what Mom said. And you didn't think that was wrong?" "She's my mom," she whispered, voice cracking. I didn't think I had to pick sides. I sat on the edge of the bed and let that sink in. She was 16, still a child, still forming her opinions based on the adults around her. But still, she had parroted it, believed it. Let it live in her heart without challenge. "You don't have to pick sides," I said, finally. "But you do have to treat people with respect, especially the ones who show up for you every single day." She didn't answer. She just sat on the floor, legs crossed, staring at the carpet. We stayed like that for a long time, quiet, tense, grieving something we couldn't name. That Sunday, I returned to the house not to move back in, but to talk. Carla was waiting, arms folded, standing in the doorway like a guard. "You can't just walk away," she said. "I already did. You're abandoning your daughter." "No," I said. "I'm setting boundaries. For the first time in my life." We sat down at the dining table, where we'd once celebrated birthdays and Christmases and promotions that clearly meant more to me than anyone else. I laid it all out. The financial changes, the legal steps I'd already taken, the accounts that would be closed. I told her I'd continue to contribute to Emily's necessities, school, medical, a modest allowance, but that everything else was now on her. Her face twisted in something between fury and fear. "You're seriously cutting me off?" "I was never your safety net, Carla. You just convinced yourself I'd never stop catching you." She stood up, knocked over her chair, and stormed into the kitchen. I heard glass shatter. I didn't flinch. I packed the rest of my things the next day quietly, methodically. Emily wasn't home. Carla watched from the hallway, silent, arms folded. I left a note on the counter with my new address. Nothing poetic, just the truth. If you want to have a relationship with me, it starts with honesty, respect, and effort. I won't settle for anything less anymore. Then I walked out. For good. There's a strange quiet that comes after a storm. Not peace exactly, just absence. The absence of chaos, of noise, of needing to explain yourself every time you say no. That was what I felt in those first few weeks living alone. A hollow kind of stillness. Like a house that had been emptied too quickly, but left standing strong. The apartment wasn't glamorous. 2 bedrooms, second floor, beige everything. But it had a lock that I alone controlled, a fridge that only emptied when I used it, and a living room that didn't echo with sarcasm or half-hearted complaints. I bought a small sofa and a coffee table from a local thrift store. I kept the lights low, played old jazz records at night. It was quiet, yes, but it was mine. I spent the first week untangling my life from Carla's. I closed joint accounts, changed passwords, removed myself from credit cards she had access to. I hired a financial planner, not to fix anything, but to confirm what I already knew. I'd spent years building a strong foundation, and now it was time to use it for me. The separation agreement went out by the end of the month. It was detailed, airtight. I'd cover Emily's educational needs and provide a modest monthly stipend until she turned 18. Carla wouldn't have access to any of my personal accounts or assets. The house would either be refinanced in her name or sold. I made sure it was fair, but firm. Carla called after she got the documents. "This is punishment," she said flatly. "You're doing this to hurt me." "No," I said. "I'm doing this because I've been hurt, and I won't allow it to keep happening. You're going to make me start over from scratch." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the irony was too rich. Start over from scratch? That's what I had done the moment I realized I was never truly loved. She'd spent years enjoying a life she hadn't earned. I was just rebalancing the scale. Emily's messages were more complicated. First, silence. Then confusion. Then anger. "Mom's losing it," she texted one night. "Why are you doing this to her?" I waited a few hours before replying. I'm not doing anything to her. I'm doing something for me. A few days later, she called me from school, crying. I don't know what to think anymore, she said. You don't have to take sides, I told her gently. But you do have to understand why I'm not coming back. She was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, you still love me, right? Always, I said. But love doesn't mean letting people treat you like they're entitled to you. After that, we began seeing each other once a week. Lunches, mostly. She was still angry sometimes, short, defensive. But she showed up. That mattered more to me than her mood. Carla, meanwhile, tried charm. Then guilt. Then legal threats she couldn't afford to follow through on. I answered every call from my lawyer, ignored everyone from her. It was a strange reversal, me on the offensive, her scrambling to keep the narrative from slipping out of her control. I didn't gloat. I didn't even feel satisfaction. Just relief. I started reading again. Cooking. Sitting on the balcony at night with a book and a bourbon. I reconnected with an old college friend over lunch and didn't check my phone once. I wasn't trying to rebuild my old life. I was making a new one. Quietly. Slowly. On my terms. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a man holding everything up. I felt like a man standing on his own. It's strange how quickly a new rhythm sets in when the old one breaks. A year passed, almost to the day, since I read Emily's diary. It feels like another lifetime now, another version of myself, quietly dying inside a house that pretended to be a home. I'm still in the same apartment. I never intended to stay this long, but something about its simplicity suits me. I can hear the birds in the morning. My neighbors nod and smile, but don't pry. I come and go as I please. That, in itself, still feels like a luxury. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. Carla didn't show up to the last hearing. She let her lawyer speak for her. Ironic, considering how many years she had no problem speaking over me. I walked out of that courthouse with a small envelope and a strange sense of lightness. Like I'd shed a skin I hadn't realized was choking me. Emily and I have lunch every Sunday now. The first few months were hard. Awkward silences, conversations that tiptoed around everything. But over time, the walls started to come down. She apologized again, properly this time. Said she didn't realize how deeply her words, or Carla's, had wounded me. I didn't mean it the way it sounded, she told me once at the cafe near my place. But I also didn't stop Mom when she said it. I guess I thought, that's just how adults talk about stuff. I stirred my coffee slowly before answering. It's okay not to understand everything at 16, I said. What matters is that you're listening now. She nodded, eyes wet but steady. I miss you being at home. I didn't flinch. I don't. That wasn't cruelty. That was honesty. I missed her, sure. But I didn't miss the house, or Carla, or the constant, gnawing sense that I was barely holding together a life no one appreciated. I explained it to Emily the best way I could. I spent 20 years thinking love was about sacrifice. That being the provider, the fixer, the constant, that made me good. But love without respect, without sincerity, that's just performance. I was financing a fantasy, and I can't do that anymore. She didn't argue. She just reached across the table and held my hand. Sometimes, she'll spend a weekend with me. We'll cook together, rent a movie, talk about college. She still rolls her eyes at my budgeting lectures, but now there's affection behind it. Real connection, not obligation. Carla tried reaching out once last month. Just a short message. You really never looked back, huh? I didn't reply, because I had looked back for a long time. In the early days, I tortured myself replaying everything I missed, every sign I ignored. But eventually, I stopped. Because looking back only makes sense when there's something worth going back to. And I finally understood, I wasn't leaving behind a family. I was leaving behind a role I never auditioned for but played too damn well. I wasn't their foundation anymore. I wasn't their fallback. I was my own person. At last. And I stood by my decision, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. I didn't walk away to punish them. I walked away to rescue myself. If they ever wanted to be in my life again, they'd have to show up. Fully. Honestly. Not for what I could provide, but for who I was. And if they couldn't, well, I'd already built a life that didn't depend on them. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever discovered a painful truth that changed everything? Your experiences matter, and we'd love to hear them. Stay tuned for more powerful, real-life stories every day. See you soon in the next one.